Hello, good morning. Welcome to my auditory blog. It's been a while since I last recorded. That was due to me getting sick on the evening of February 14th. I came down with just a pretty bad cold that knocked me down for a number of days, and I was just in no way able to record. I couldn't, there was just not, it wasn't going to work. And then after that, even when I did start to feel better, my throat sounded horrific. And I didn't think that I needed to subject anyone other than my husband to that. So that's the reason why I have not been uploading anything. But right now I'm on the mend and I feel much, much better. And I feel as though I'm kind of getting back into the swing of things. I have to say that being sick when you're a little older is way worse than when you're younger. I can't imagine being a teacher right now and having to go to work feeling as bad as I did. So yeah, I'm glad that's done. So we can go ahead and get on with the newest blog post that I have just uploaded yesterday that I called Time Warp. I'm not exactly sure why I decided to call it a time warp, but for me, there's got to be some reason in there, and I'm sure I'm going to elaborate on that at some point or another here in the next half hour or so. So let's just get into it, okay? So, what brought me here today? The subjects of this particular post, almost as always, have been rattling around in my mind for a while, most in their own distinctly disparate parts. Only when they begin to bang into one another do they continue their random bounce house travels through my brain, do I really begin to see the interrelatedness of some of the ideas. It's kind of like that, you got peanut butter in my chocolate, you got chocolate in my peanut butter kind of thing from the Reese's commercials from years ago. As many of you know, I usually have something playing on my laptop as I work on the artwork that I'm making. Much of the time, I ping pong back and forth between MST3K, riff tracks, and what my husband calls murder shows. 9 times out of 10, I'm treating them all like a combination of cafe noise, an audiobook, or a podcast. Some, like my favorite MST3K broadcast, The Horror of Party Beach, which I really, really recommend. I put a link to it in my post. Just go watch it. I can almost regurgitate verbatim with fairly little prompting, which can make situations rather surreal for my husband at times, especially when we're out and I'm just randomly blurting out non sequiturs, which have absolutely nothing to do with what we're talking about. I do sometimes become bored with what I'm listening to and want to add something new to the mix. There were some new documentaries on HBO that looked like something I could listen to. Crazy, Not Insane, a documentary, caught my interest. It was an okay documentary. There wasn't really anything breaking in it or about it. It was just what you'd expect from the kind of crime documentary. It's got, salacious details and people doing horrific things. Pretty much boilerplate crime, stuff. Long story, somewhat longer. The one and only thing that I took away from it was the need to look deeper into the psychiatric concept of dissociative states. Okay, now dissociating. The documentary followed the work of psychiatrist Dorothy Ochno-Lewis. She's made a study of dissociative identity disorder, which is usually called DID. They used to call it like having alternative personalities, but they don't call it that anymore. DID is the more common use now. And she was looking at DID as it specifically relates to people who commit crimes. To put a finer point on it, those individuals that commit brutal, horrific types of murders, serial murders, and icky things to other human beings. She discovered that many of the people who commit the most heinous crimes had incredibly horrific childhoods, which went a long way to explaining why they did what they did. She wasn't looking to excuse what they did. She just wanted to know how one human can do that to another human. She just wanted to explain the mechanisms. At one point, she was explaining what a dissociative state is within the human mind, because all humans dissociate from time to time. She used the example of driving home from work, and then poof, you're at home, and you can't really remember how you got there. You don't remember driving the route. You may shake your head and think, oh man, I really could have killed somebody there. I wasn't really in control of anything. But again, breathe easy. Everyone dissociates. You're not a serial murderer. Now, for some specifics, I did some online research. And again, I know the difference between real research, like you would do for a master's degree, or as a scientist or a historian. And what I did for this blog post was basically kind of stick my toe in the water and maybe another toe and swirl it around a little bit. I did not go into a lot of research. I didn't read any papers about DID. I did not read any papers or scientific journals about dissociative states. So what we're getting here is a little more than what a layman might know, but it is not in-depth research. And if you have any real questions about it, you need to go talk to somebody who knows more than a doll-making artist in Wilmington, Delaware, blathering into a microphone. Yeah, I'm not an expert on any of this stuff. And with that being said, I did do some of my own research. Nothing incredibly deep, mind you, just enough to satisfy my own personal interest in the topic. The first thing I found is that there are two different words that sometimes get used as interchangeably. The first is dissociative. Okay, I'll say it again. Dissociative means split off as a component of mental activity, or to act as an independent part of mental life. Disassociate, on the other hand, means to stop associating with or disconnect from a person, place, or thing. And again, I'll say disassociate. And you can kind of see where dissociative and disassociate can kind of be used, interchangeably. The pronunciations are so similar that I now know, after doing this tiny bit of research, that I've been using them almost interchangeably when they do both have very different definitions. An example of disassociation would be ending a relationship with a romantic partner or quitting a job with a toxic work environment. The important thing to remember with disassociation is that it's something that is done with the full knowledge of the person who has chosen to disassociate themselves from a person or persons, or even perhaps places or objects. They have chosen consciously to say, I am not going to be romantically involved with this person anymore. I am not going to continue with this job anymore because it is not good for me for whatever reason. Examples of dissociation, besides driving home without realizing it, can be scrolling on social media, binge watching your favorite show, or playing a video game. It's kind of a little akin to kind of zoning out. Sometimes people will do things. You scroll on social media as a means of relaxation. I've heard people talk about they come home, they play some video games for a while just to kind of zone out and have something to do, and it's their transition activity into something else. You haven't really made conscious decisions while you're doing some of this scrolling stuff. It's just kind of leading you where it's going. But you're finding yourself in strange spots. You're not really thinking a whole lot about things. If that gives any kind of, like I said, a cursory research dive kind of explanation. So with all that sorted out, hopefully I haven't confused anyone. I feel as though I've confused myself right now. Exactly why did I find the concept of dissociating so extremely fascinating that I decided to write an entire blog post about it? Well, it starts with me going to the salon to have my hair professionally colored for the first time in a very long time. And of course, it's me, so you need some extraneous yet helpful information to help you put the dots together because you're not inside my brain. I feel the need to add some important information here. Over the past 3 or 4 weeks, I've been working on some ideas for a new series of pieces that I want to create. It's not the kind of artwork creation that I wanted to just jump into without having my conscious mind and my subconscious kind of chat back and forth a little bit. And what that really means is I just need things to kind of sit and move around a little bit. I need to make some connections to make sure that what I hope to achieve is in the finished piece says what I need them to say. To that end, I've been collecting materials and doing some sorting out of how I want to construct the individual pieces, what materials I'll need to search for, what do I need to purchase, or what can I upcycle, what do I have on hand or can easily lay my hands on. Then there were sketches and some writing, and I actually just rolled my eyes while I'm typing all this because I feel as though I'm telling you things that you already know about how an artist goes about creating their artwork. You know, you're like, duh, you're prepping for some artwork. Get to it. Let's go. Next. When I'm sorting out the nuts and bolts of a new piece of art that I want to create, I'm usually working in a sketchbook with a pen. This is my most preferred method of working. The sketchbooks I use are the ones I create myself with recycled materials, graph paper, and a simple saddle stitch. Each booklet measures about 21 by 13 centimeters, 8¼ by 5¼ and by the end of the project, they are an accurate depiction of the inside of my brain, held together with copious amounts of tape, pen scribbles, and candy wrappers. In this case, a lot of Bitto honey. That's kind of what I'm into right now. Time on my hands. In a lot of situations, if I get an idea, I can just pull out my sketchbook and quickly write or draw whatever I need to. It means that I'm never bored while waiting in line or at a doctor's appointment, even if it may make me look a little strange while I'm doing so. I've gotten strange looks when I've been sitting and waiting for something and then I whip out a sketchbook or a little notebook and I start furiously writing in it. I notice that sometimes it makes other people a little uncomfortable, like I am writing about them, maybe? I'm not really sure. So, cut to me sitting in a chair with metal foils in my hair and at least the better part of a half an hour to kill. I can't wear my glasses, which means that drawing and writing are a no-go. I need to remain fairly still so that I don't knock anything around too much. And it was a Friday in the salon and it was very busy and I didn't want to get in anybody's way. People are moving around, trying to do their jobs. There's other clients. I just basically need to sit still and keep my mouth shut. There was nothing for me to do but basically sit there and think. Well, to be specific, think about the new series of pieces that I want to create in the future. Believe it or not, sitting still and not talking are something I am actually fairly good at. The problem for me arose when I needed to write something down so I didn't forget it. I am always writing things down. If I don't write things down, I forget them. For me, memory and hand movement, writing and drawing are so firmly intertwined that writing myself a note is the quickest way for me to make sure I remember to do something. And that's just how I am. The problem for me arose when I needed to write something down so I didn't forget it. So many ideas float off into the ether when I cannot put pen to paper. And it really drives me nuts when I can't do that. So I'm sitting there. I had no sketchbook, but I did have my phone. I was smart enough not to have put my phone in my purse. I put it in my pocket. So I cracked open my notes application on my phone and began to plunk ideas, concepts, etc. into it. The salon has free Wi-Fi, so I could even look up anything I thought I needed more information about. With no glasses, I just held the phone like really close, super close to my face as my thumbs typed away. I may not have been able to draw my ideas, but I could write out what I was thinking about. With this solution, the 2-hour hair coloring appointment went by incredibly quickly. And I kid you not, it felt like I was there a half an hour. My aha moment. And I'm not talking about the 80s band. Aha moment. Although I think they might have played some Aha while I was there. After I was finished and my husband and I were off to grab lunch at a local sandwich place, Gaudiello's, if you're here in Wilmington or the Wilmington area, go to Gaudiello's. Their sandwiches are fabulous. Their staff is incredibly nice. They do a lot of takeaway stuff. This is not a paid endorsement. Every sandwich I have had there is fabulous. My personal favorite is the Cuban, and they will make some changes for you if you need to for dietary reasons, but it's a place that serves some really just fabulous hoagies. They're online too. I put a link in my blog post. And again, this is not paid. Just go there and have a sandwich. It's fabulous. I assumed that what I had experienced at the salon was simply me being in a flow state. Now, if you don't know what a flow state is, again, I put a link in my blog. I'll just, I link everything in my blog. Flow states, if you don't know what a flow state is, it's Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi he's alive. Yeah, he is alive. A researcher I think he was doing this in the 70s. I'm looking through my notes here. Is that when you're in a flow state, you're like being in the flow or in the zone. He was looking at artists and how artists were transporting themselves almost. You're performing an activity in which you are fully immersed in a feeling of energized focus, fulfillment, and enjoyment of the process of the activity. So I know what a flow state is. I have been a practicing flow state user for probably about 40 years. So I know what it's about, and I know when I'm getting into it. I can feel it coming on. And for me, as a person, a lot of people talk about how when they're in a flow state, when they're working on their art, their writing, their music, their dance, etc., for them, time seems to drop away. I'm fairly good at knowing what time it is without having to look at a clock. I have a good sense of time. I know I can feel the passage of time while I'm in a flow state. Only rarely will it take me by surprise where I will go, oh gosh, it's already 8 o'clock. I need to go have dinner. But I know when I'm in it. I know when I'm there. I know when I'm stepping off into it. It's a sensation that is, I'm not quite sure how to even describe it. But like I said, what was happening to me in the salon did not feel like a flow state. And like I said, what I mean is that I've been experiencing flow states as a visual artist for the better part of 25 years. I think I just said 40 years. We'll go with 25, maybe 30. I don't know. I'm no expert. I'm experiencing one right now as I write. It's not something I have to work hard at achieving. I know what it feels like. And yeah, it's kind of like stepping into the water and the current just takes you away. But you are in complete control while you're there. There's no sense of not being. It is, you are there in the moment, in control, completely focused and immersed in what you're doing. I was not experiencing a flow state at the salon. I know that. It was much more of an on-off kind of feeling, with the time element being something that I was surprised by, specifically the passage of time. While in flow, I know that time is passing. I just explained that, but it just kind of seems slowed down. At the salon, it was much more like the type, I would type into my notes, the app on my notes, and when I returned, a half an hour or more had passed. I was not sleeping. I know I wasn't sleeping. I know that because I am a weird sleeper and I snore and I drool and that's too much information, but I was not asleep. I was merely somewhere else. I had been creating within my mind something I try hard to explain this. It never seems to come out right. If you look up what an exploded drawing is, or an exploded version of something like a technical drawing, it's kind of like that, but all the parts move. And I'm moving parts around in my mind and substituting things. And will this work? Will that work? Can I do this? And a lot of that relies on my own personal efficacy of knowing what my materials and my tools will do. So I'm a person who has no problem picturing anything in her mind. And it is more like an exploded version of something, a picture. So that kind of comes close if you're listening to this and you're not a creator, it's kind of like that. I know I was creating in my mind because of the notes I found in my app afterwards. So I would type something into my app, my notes app, and then I would stop and I would be sitting there and thinking and doing this explodey thing in my head, and then return to my app and type things in. So I know, and I also have a memory of the things that I was creating in my head, if that makes any sense. Again, as an artist, sometimes it's weird to talk about your own creative process and then trying to explain it to someone who is creative and then someone who isn't creative. And when I say isn't a creative, is in that someone who does not work with their hands to make something and manipulate something, someone who's not familiar with flow states or etc., if that makes any sense. So at this point, I'm kind of just wondering what the heck happened. Brain soup. Oh, okay. So now I don't think that what I experienced is anything amazingly special. I'm not amazing and I'm not special. I am just as special as everyone else. Remember, humans dissociate all the time. What made me sit up and take notice of this particular salon episode, as I'm now calling it, is that it could not have been the first time that I experienced this degree of dissociation, which got me thinking about some less than fun stuff from my youth and my young adulthood, specifically emotional trauma that has affected me and how I am mentally and emotionally wired right now, in the here and the now. I'm familiar with a multitude of coping mechanisms that I've developed over the years to keep myself and my identity intact. Some of those methods of coping with emotional trauma are, on a good day, merely annoying. Others I have wrestled into working for me in specific circumstances. My need to have plans A through triple Z in place so that I'm prepared for, insert trauma generator of whatever, kind, has been used in my teaching practice, mostly for planning my lessons and successive curriculum, expected outcomes for students, and managing interactions with elements of the job outside of the classroom. But my imposter syndrome, I've never been able to make that do anything remotely positive for me. And my apologizing for everything that happens in the world just seems to make people really uncomfortable around me. So those are two of my coping mechanisms that I've never quite, gotten to work for me in any kind of positive way. Now, I've been estranged from my family for the better part of 10 years. It was a conscious choice for me. My reasons for doing so don't need to be gone into any gory depth and detail here, but suffice it to say, I did it so that I could be mentally and emotionally healthy. It was a choice that I made that is right for me. And I'll just leave that there. I remember beginning to dissociate around 13 or 14. However, I think I may have been a few years younger than that when it actually started to form, maybe. It was just like kind of taking a step to the right. You're in a situation and then you just kind of go, I don't want to be here anymore. I really, 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 really don't want to be here anymore. And when you're young, you don't quite know what to do, so you just kind of go, zoop, and you're gone. The emotional trauma I was experiencing was the cause. Now, in no way, shape, or form am I saying I have full-blown DID. No. What I'm saying is I do this because of an emotional trauma that helped me to keep myself all put together and not break into a million pieces, if that makes any sense. For me, taking that little step to the right was akin more to mentally and emotionally kind of folding in on myself almost. Taking myself to a place where I could maintain my sense of self with the uppercase S. It was a coping mechanism. From this point, my imagination began to grow exponentially. I've been told that I have an overactive imagination a lot. My family members in particular, my imagination was too large. I had more than enough servings for like 10 different people. And then, so we've got me doing some dissociative things. And when I say dissociative as a young person, as a child, I mean going off to be by myself, not interacting, just, it's hard to explain because again, I'm trying to explain going somewhere without going somewhere. And I also happen to be a maladaptive daydreamer. I was much worse at it. It was more of a not fabulous thing when I was much younger. And you combine the dissociative, the imagination that is just getting gargantuan, and then the maladaptive daydreaming coming in. Again, I've got links to everything in my post. But again, I make the maladaptive daydreaming thing has become, I made it work for me. I'm making it pay rent. It doesn't really seem like a hindrance to me anymore. I have my own life. I have my own friends. I have a husband. I have a life that I enjoy very much. So the maladaptive daydreaming thing has just been kind of turned and pushed into, it's in my brain, but I make it pay rent. kind of thing. And it works for me. I think it aids me in those exploding drawings in my head a lot. Wow, I really deviated from the point here, didn't I? Now, again, at this point, you're saying, okay, Katie, you're just basically just blurting out all these really incredibly personal things about yourself and how you think and how you create for the whole world to see. Yeah, I think so, because I think it's kind of fascinating how stuff works, how my brain works. And when I know how my brain works, then it helps me be a more empathetic and kinder person, I believe, because if I am this nutty on the inside and layered, etc., that means, of course, everybody is, right? Which just sets everything up for, hopefully me being a much more empathetic and nicer person, I would hope. I suppose that the reason that I'm all over this single dissociative episode is that I'd not realized that I really even did this at all. And that's the hinky thing. When something happens and then you realize, oh, so this is what I've been doing. Or even the degree to which I have been doing it, I didn't realize. I'd read articles regarding emotional trauma and emotional trauma survivors, and many of them mentioned dissociation as a sign of it. It seemed to be the one and only coping method that I just kind of went, oh, I guess I don't have that. I guess you can't, hit, all 9 out of 9. I've got a solid 8 or a solid 6 or whatever list I'm looking at or whatever paper I'm reading. I really thought that dissociating was basically only for people who had dissociative identity disorder. It didn't even occur to me that there might be degrees to which everyday people might dissociate with their surroundings without consciously knowing it. I mean, beyond, scrolling the internet or driving your car. The last time I had a major mental health problem was when we were still living in Finland. And during that time, and while I was in the presence of someone who was, laying on every single one of my trauma buttons at once, sometimes just jamming a heel right into them, I began to mentally and emotionally spiral really out of control. I somehow thought I was doing a really good job of not spiraling out of control, but no, I was feeling those cold hands on my ankles, and I could start feeling the pull, the downward pull of depression, and go into that really icky black place that I do not like going and didn't think I would ever go again. I kind of thought, I've got my mental health stuff like all taken care of. Woo, I'm on my meds. I've gone to therapy. Yay! No, a good friend of mine who was also consulting with my husband at the time pulled me aside. In fact, she had me over to her place. We did a little thrift shopping and then went and had lunch at her place. Fabulous cook. Point blank told me that I was scaring her. She told me that she had no idea who I was while in the presence of this other person. And this other person's presence didn't really need to be there because she said, you are not acting like yourself. I wasn't the person that she knew or called friend. And she was right. And after that, my husband and I did a bunch of talking, and I made an appointment with the doctor. They got me in, I want to say that night. They got me in because I remember it was dark outside, and it was more like I was, oh man, my heart's squeezing tight even thinking about this. I did a lot of paperwork and a lot of other things, and the doctor was like, yeah, we're going to do some things about this. Finland doesn't mess around when it comes to depression. So I had follow-up care with my doctor. We moved around medications and dosages and found something that worked for me and is continuing to work for me right now. And I made the decision to cut ties with the person who had caused and was causing a lot of that emotional trauma for me. So that, while it was an incredibly hard decision to make, I know that it was the right decision for me because I'm still here. And I'm not like trying to scare anybody, but it's not the first time that I've been down that depressive spiral that was going to take me to some place that would basically be me unaliving myself kind of thing. And it seems odd when people hear about that was ever something that I would even remotely think about. You don't know depression. And and I'm still here. And I think that the decisions that I've made were the right ones for me at the time that I made them. And everybody is different and everybody has their own road to go down. So I'm not saying, do what I did and become, weirdo artist who likes to sit and think too much. Yeah. So what now? Well, I'm not exactly sure. What I do know is that I know my mind and I know my creative process a lot better. It seems wacky to me that I've gotten some of these coping mechanisms to actually work for me, that I've kind of bent them to my own will. If you're going to be taking up space in my head, I'm going to make you do these things. I always feel a little flippant when I say art is my therapy, but it really is true. Art, in more specifically, creating art has helped me to keep myself with the capital S and my identity and my person together and moving in one direction. It's not always neat, it's not always clean, and it's not always pretty. And hell, sometimes it's not even in a remotely straight line. It's sometimes more of Katie and the IKEA. It doesn't have to be that way. It does seem to have a lot of layers though. And I'm putting one foot in front of the other and I'm moving forward and towards something while at the same time understanding what my journey has done to me or has affected me, I guess I should say, as I do plunk those one foot in front of the other and I keep moving forward. Because understanding who I am and what makes me tick aids in that forward momentum for me. It keeps me going. And I think that, like I said, in knowing myself, I feel as if I know I can better relate to the people who are around me. It seems as if it's more of a self-absorbed kind of thing. Here I am examining, dissociating and how I'm, why does my brain do this? Blah, blah, blah. I'm all about me, 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 me. No, it makes me know and puts it in the forefront that other people have other ways of thinking, doing, and being in the world. And if I would like them to accept me for all of my weirdness of thinking and doing and being, that they would expect the same thing I would expect the same thing for them as they would expect from me. So I think that, I think that's pretty much it. And I think by this point, you probably have figured out why I decided to call this blog post The Time Warp, which I guess kind of dates me just a smidgen. So hopefully that has made some bit of sense. I don't plan on being this heavy in my next audio blog, my auditory blog. That's what I think I've been starting to call these. And hopefully I can talk about other things that are maybe a little bit lighter. But, what do I know? I know me. So I'm talking about stuff that I'm interested in. And so, yeah. Thank you for listening. If you've made it all the way to the end here, thank you so much for listening. And I will see you back here again next Sunday.